It's Divas That Care Radio. Stories, strategies, and ideas to inspire positive change. Welcome to Divas That Care, a network of women committed to making our world a better place for everyone. This is a global movement for women, by women, engaged in a collaborative effort to create a better world for future generations. To find out more about the movement, visit divasthatcare.com after the show. Right now, though, stay tuned for another jolt of inspiration.
All right. Well, welcome back to another edition of our Heart Driven Hustle podcast. I am grateful today. As you know, I usually start off with a little chit chat with my guests before I hit play, so we get a bit of an energy and a flow going, and I'm really stoked. So before I get too far into who we're getting to chat with today, I want to say a big thank you to our host, the Divas That Care Network. They create a great platform for myself and a number of other hosts to come on, interview amazing people, and get both great concepts, ideas, thoughts, stories out into the world. And I think a lot of us have stories that we'd love to share, and there isn't always a place for us to do so. So thank you for the Divas That Care Network that make this possible. Twisted my arm to make sure that I was doing this, but thank you for that, Candace Gish. I appreciate you. Now, for those of you who are listening in, if you get value out of this, the best way for you to give us an online high five is to make sure you like, share, comment, subscribe. I know it doesn't seem like a big deal, but it matters. And that's how you can let us content creators know that what we're doing is adding value to your life, and we can continue to do more of that. So without any further ado, Danielle is my guest today, and I have the pleasure of working with her. We're doing some marketing with her for one of her newer ventures, which I'm super stoked about, which we'll talk about. It's all about women. And anybody who follows along knows that I'm a pretty big champion for women causes and making sure that voices that maybe aren't heard are being heard. Now, Danielle, before I get too far into some of that stuff, I would love it if you could sort of share us your bio or whatever you want our listeners to know. And then I got, of course, a couple of questions I'm going to fire off at you. But without any further ado, Danielle.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me, Candace. It's awesome to chat with you today.
Mm-hmm.
So my name's Danielle Klooster, and I actually manage 3 brands. I have a coaching and consulting practice called Danny Kloo Consulting, where I help entrepreneurs who are in the startup phase or in a growth hump. And I also do strategy and planning with both businesses and not-for-profits. And I've been running that for about 8 years. And I'm also a recovering politician. And I wrote a viral blog post when I decided not to run for municipal council again, called 5 Terrible Reasons to Run for Municipal Office. And the blog post went viral. It still gets reprinted across Canada today. So last year I decided it was time to turn it into a book and try to help people who are interested in running for politics to know what makes an effective politician, and also to help voters make a better choice in their voting selections. Mm-hmm. So the book, 5 Terrible Reasons to Run for Municipal Office, is available on Amazon, or you can just smoke signal, carrier pigeon, reach out to me in some way, and I'll get you a copy.
Yeah, and we will have all of her contact information down low. So you just scroll on down, you'll find that. Yeah,
excellent.
You got it.
Thank you. And so then the third brand is a startup that I am a business partner in. It's called Sharp Women, and I'm in that partnership with Ranchelle Van Bryce, and we're very privileged to have your team on board with us, doing some great work. So we're super excited about what we're building there. Mm-hmm. And the essence of Sharp Women is to help us live our lives on point. So what does it mean to be a sharp woman? How do we smash down perfectionism and comparison and judgment and shame and all of those things that prevent us in every way from having healthy lives, from having successful relationships, from being wealthy, prosperous, having an abundant life. So we do a number of things. We have events. We have a magazine, Sharp Women Magazine. It's a digital magazine, and we have training that we offer and master classes and that sort of thing. So we're building this really robust business to serve women and help them live their lives on point. Those are the 3 things I do professionally. And I'm having a great time with it.
I love that. Yeah, it was a real honor when Ranchelle introduced it. Actually, I think you beat her onto this podcast. I've talked to her about it, but she's been so crazy busy. So I get to interview you first.
Yay!
Hooray, right? What do you know?
Yay.
That's awesome. Well, and I mean, it's exciting, Danielle. Of course, you and I've had a couple of chances to chat, of course, as we've been getting, you know, the marketing and stuff and focusing on Sharp Women, which I'm pretty passionate about, having been, you know, an entrepreneur well, for a long time, and been very blessed by great advice. You know, I've met some great women who have come alongside, saved me a lot of hassle, helping me as I rise. And I think collaboration is the name of the game.
Absolutely.
And I mean, that's certainly what's happening, you know, with your team and my team. It's a coming together and a sharing of great ideas. But when you and I were chatting before we got started here, you had talked about a defining moment and how your life has changed. And I teared up when you did it, because 2020 for me has been, I didn't think that was going to happen. That happened. And, you know, I think a lot of people are still, you know, reeling from what happened with COVID and what will continue to happen as we adjust to a new normal. I think normal is going to be a moving target for a while. And so, you know, change management has become sort of the name of the game. But you had talked about living from a very special place. And I teared up because 2020 has really sort of, I mean, I was close, but it sort of pushed me over the edge to that I have to live from that space in order to continue to adjust. And so I'd love it if you could share that
absolutely
with our listeners.
Absolutely. So my life, even though I was raised in a really good family and, you know, had opportunity and, you know, really middle class and all of that, my life was kind of defined by shame. And I think that it was just that I'm a very empathetic feeling person. And so I took on a lot of shame, very religious environment. And I was sexually assaulted when I was a teenager, and a pregnancy resulted, and my life was marked from that moment. And I struggled with guilt and shame and just overwhelming feelings of either too much or not enough, and sort of swung the pendulum between those two kind of stories that would play in my head. And so I ran headlong into perfectionism and needing my life to be perfect in all ways, so that first of all, I could keep myself safe by being perfect. But that also so that I could be acceptable and loved. And so at the end of my first marriage, I ended up coming to Red Deer, to the women's shelter, with nothing. And so starting from nothing, I managed to do 2 overnight shifts at Tim Hortons before, you know, we all agreed that this wasn't going to work. You can't sleep at work, and that was bad. So I ended up just sort of working my way up. But honestly, the last 22 years really have been a journey for me. And the defining moment was when I realized that the stories that I was telling myself were limiting me and punishing me, and that they were only being true in my life because I was deciding that they were true. And whoever your higher power is, however you describe that, for me, I say God. And I really felt like God was saying to me, I don't think that way about you. I don't see you that way. I didn't make you that way. But when you decide that your truth is higher than my truth and your word is above my word, then you get to create that reality. And the reality that I know to be true isn't going to exist. And so I started doing the hardest work I've ever done in my life, and that was to change the way I think. And changing the way I think means that even though it looks true, sounds true, smells true, feels true, proves true in my life, if it doesn't serve me and move me forward, if it limits me and punishes me, I might deserve to think that, but I can't afford it. And so I started to do the hard work of retraining catching myself thinking these shame thoughts, self-recrimination and condemnation and comparison and competition and all of those things, and started retraining to myself to think, what does God say about me and who I am, and how do I learn who I am? Mm-hmm. So a journey of self-discovery, a journey of trust and surrender and retrain. And honestly, of everything I've done, everything I've been through, that was the hardest thing I've ever done. The discipline, the mental toughness involved in choosing to believe something that doesn't feel true, but serves you, is really hard work.
It is.
And yeah.
I just was thinking about that, you know, it's only true. You know, it's like when you see a yellow car, then all you see is yellow cars, right? They were there before, mm-hmm. but you just weren't paying attention right. to it. And so there's an element of, you know, that which is true for me is only true for me because you keep on thinking it. And so it becomes true, right? It's that self-fulfilling prophecy.
Absolutely.
And how mm-hmm. powerful is that? I had
mm-hmm.
a similar sort of an experience years ago when someone said, you know, you're really negative. It's like, what? And the last name like Smiley, right? I can't be anything but happy all the time, right? Yeah, set me up for success, right? You have a great smile, I know. You know, it's like, but I started to catch myself and the number of times that there was a negative, and it was so subtle. It was in that realm of you don't know what you don't know. It's right outside of your of that zone, right? It's like you don't say don't forget, you say remember. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing, but the intention and the power behind it is like, right, light years different. So what a powerful place for you to come from.
Yeah, absolutely. But but you know what, it transformed my life. Mm-hmm. And I started to recognize that because I'm a feeling, empathetic person, that mm-hmm. I would pick up things that don't even belong to me. Mm-hmm. So if I walked into a room and there was an angry feeling, or people were tense, or there was just mm-hmm. depression in the room, mm-hmm. I didn't recognize that wasn't my feeling. And I would take that feeling, I feel so, And so what I would either do was accept it and feel those things, or I would think, oh, geez, this is ugly. I got to get out of here, right? And when I started to do the work of knowing who I am and showing up, accepting and loving who I am and showing up as that, mm-hmm. The atmosphere doesn't set me. I set the atmosphere. I walk into the room and I say, I'm bringing wisdom and joy into this place because that's who I am and that's what I walk in. So that's what walks into the room with me. And when you come into a space with that level of command of this is who I am, of course I am respected. I'm a respectable person. Mm-hmm. Of course I am confident. I'm a person in whom you can have confidence. Mm-hmm. Of course you feel that level of, oh, you know, the atmosphere just changed. Yes, because I brought that in. Yep. I walk in that level of attention and intention. And mm-hmm. that way, yeah, we can have COVID. Yeah, we can have economic crash. Yeah, we can have significant changes in our life circumstances, but I don't change. I show up, like, meanwhile, back at the ranch, things are kind of going sideways.
Yeah,
right? But mm-hmm. Like those ancient gladiator or war movies where like there's an army battling on the battlefield, and then in strides the captain, and he's just walking through the field, you know, and you're thinking like, how is he not getting hit right now? Or like he's impervious to it. Yes, pretty much. Yes, pretty much. It's not that bad things aren't going to happen to me. It's not that I'm going to never feel those things and have to make adjustments and whatever, but it's never going to make me question who I am and how I'm going to show up. And if I am going to live the life that I am here to live and have the things that I desire to have, abundance and prosperity and love and generosity and gratitude and clarity and peace, then that's how I have to show up. And that's who I am, and that's what I have to walk in every day. And you know, I see, like, as women have risen in the marketplace, and we were in this post-World War II era where you just take a terrible job and you stay there for 40 years and then you retire. But while you're working, it's all very competitive and cutthroat. And so we were socialized that that's the right way to do things. So if women are going to enter the marketplace, again, the atmosphere has to impact them. They've got to show up and be competitive and small and work at a terrible job that they hate and they've got to assimilate into that environment. Oh, hell no. No. Women don't have to, nobody has to do that. But my heart for women is to say, you show up with your feminine power and energy, know who you are, love who you are, walk in who you are, and you don't need to compete. You don't need to compare. You don't need to step on anybody. You just show up as your sharpest version of yourself and live your life on point. And I guarantee that instead of the atmosphere changing you, you're going to change the atmosphere. And you're going to live the life you've always wanted to live.
Well, I think it's really interesting that you bring this up, Danielle, because it makes it easy for me to realize why we are working together in collaboration the way we are. Because you don't attract what you want, you attract who you are. And I always, when I tell people that, they go, what? And I say, yeah, because I mean, I've got, you know, friends and they're dating and they're like, I keep attracting this person. I'm like, you don't attract what you want, you attract who you are. Right? I get these clients and they're always, I'm like, don't attract what you want. Right? And I think that's really interesting because most recently I've been shifting into my feminine, and you know, in my business I tend to be more of the outward facing, right? And so drawing that in, but as a company we sat down and wrote out, because I have values that run my life, right? And so then I make decisions based on whether or not it fits with my values. We've done the same thing with our business, right? And I went to each of the team members and I said, give me 3 values of what the company is for you. So whether that's something you're bringing to the company because you're part of the company, right? That sort of thing. Yeah. And then it was interesting when we started to put them all together, the overlap that was coming through. And I said, well, of course there's overlap, right? We've all been looking for the same thing. And so as I'm listening to you share, I'm like, well, of course you'd be all about feminine empowerment and holding the space and changing this, because that's me. So I'm like, well, duh, you know, like,
yeah. Isn't that funny how that works? Yeah.
Right. And we had no idea yet. You know, I don't know about you, but both times we got off the phone when we had some intense conversations about next steps and strategies, I left feeling like, yeah, I love this client. Right. So this is a fun place to be. So this is usually the part of the podcast where I say to my guests, you know, if there's some message that you'd love to share with the listeners, this would be a great opportunity to do it. And so I do want to open it up, you know, for you to say that to whoever's listening in. What do you want to share?
So one of the things that Ranchelle has really inspired in me is to think about a couple of different questions. So rather than thinking about, yeah, but how am I going to do it? Yeah, but you don't know, like, it's easy for you to say all that stuff, Danielle, and it sounds really lovely and it's all nice and soft and fuzzy and whatever, but you don't know what's going on in my life. Like, you don't know. and these obstacles, and you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And people will often choose to ask, yeah, but how would I do that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but how would that work? And they go straight to how. And I just want to encourage people to sit for a bit in, but what is possible? But what is possible? Just sit with that. What is possible? It's possible that I could love myself enough to treat myself well. It's possible enough that I could love myself enough to have healthy boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
It's possible that that everything that's happened to me in my life is a giant tapestry that's going to weave together into a beautiful piece of art that I can't see right now, but that I like. All kinds of things are possible. So, and when I say to ask what is possible, I'm not saying to ask, yeah, what other, brick is going to land on me, or,
Right.
Like, it's possible I get hit by a meteor too, right?
Yes.
But in terms of opportunity and a different way of thinking about things, what is possible? And I don't know anybody for whom it's not possible for them to live their best life.
Mm-hmm. Especially
because you get to decide that.
Yeah, you do. You get to choose.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a choice. I like that you said, what is possible, because someone says, well, you're an optimist. I said, no, I dwell in possibility. There's a difference.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I dwell in what is possible. What if? What if?
Mm-hmm.
And now, if you're my marketing team, then that means I usually go, I have an idea, and they're like, oh boy, right? Because
yeah, I know. I'm always afraid when Ranchelle says that. I'm like, oh
God, no. But at the same time, it's only impossible until someone gets it done, and then it is possible. And so I like dwelling in possibility, because
the 4-minute mile was impossible. Yeah.
Yes, until someone did it.
Until somebody did it, and then everybody did it.
Yep.
Now the 4-minute mile is nothing.
It's nothing.
Everybody runs the 4-minute. Well, not me personally, but
yeah.
people who run.
No, but I think too, because of course, I've got a 5-year-old, and sometimes that kid will. I'll careful, and gentle are my 2 favorite words these days. Careful, gentle. But she will go to pick up something that I think is way too heavy for her, right? Jump off something that is like, in reference to me, there's no way I do it, right? In terms of that.
Right.
And she just does it. And I think, how much of that is because nobody's told her that it would be impossible to do so? In fact, it comes up for me a lot. And something that often plays in my mind, Danielle, is that, so my grandmother had some, like most, older, or a lot of older people, right, their memories go at the end for one reason or another. And at the end of her life, she did a lot of painting, but she never did any painting throughout her life before that. And I remember coming into her room, right, and I said to her, I said, Grandma, did you do these? And her attitude was like, well, of course I did them. And I remember thinking, I wonder what I would attempt if I didn't have a mindset that said I couldn't. Right? And I have never forgotten that when I'm looking at something and thinking, oh, wow, I'm overwhelmed by this, or how am I going to get this done, right? Go to the how.
Right.
I think, right, okay, but if I believed I could, what supports do I need to find? What phone calls do I need to make? In fact, the podcast we did right before this one was all about reaching out for support. That it's tons out there, and everybody's having a very different COVID experience. And that if you're not having a good one, figure out how you can change that. And if you're having a good one, how can you share that? But what a powerful message for you to share today, Danielle.
Absolutely. Yeah, that and that's really interesting, that whole thing of, what if it's not the external circumstances that are limiting me? What if it's my mindset? What if the way that I'm approaching it? Yeah, 100%. You know, I used to always think, oh, I can't keep up. Oh, I don't have enough time. Oh, I'm overwhelmed. And as long as I was telling myself that it was completely true. So when I learned to change it to, I have all the time I need to do everything I need to do. And I'm not overwhelmed. I'm managing all of this really well.
Yeah.
And just changing that, like, you just feel the change in energy. The other question that I was referring to that I ask myself on the daily, so I have a daily intention statement that I say. I have it on my makeup mirror so that I can meditate on it while I'm getting ready in the morning. And it's a statement about who I am. So the three tenets of who I am is basically leadership. And it was quite a journey to come to accept that I'm a leader, and that no matter what happens, I'm going to be a leader. I can either fight against it or I can accept it and walk in it. And then wisdom and joy. And those are the three markers of my life. So my intention statement is, today I will positively influence, impact, and inspire those around me, bringing wisdom and joy to the day. And when I say that sentence in the morning, and I reflect on it and I think about it throughout the day as I am facing situations or having conversations, I'm able to ask myself, what does leadership look like in this moment? What does wisdom look like in this moment? What does joy look like in this moment? And that enables me to live out of my higher self, out of my largeness instead of out of smallness, right? So sometimes leadership is really hard, especially if you want to be reactionary and somebody's hurting your feelings. What does leadership, what does wisdom, what does joy look like in this moment? And so if people can ask themselves what is possible, and if they can develop their intention statement, their personal vision statement based on who they are, then they can check in with who they are throughout the day and say, what does blank look like in this moment? And then you are able to operate out of who you are. You got a dog barking.
This is obviously a good one, because when the distractions come in, it's always really, really good. Hang on one sec. Hang on. All right. Well, you know what? These are in real time, and I promise people I'm not going to edit them, but thank goodness for the pause button so that we can go and deal with life. Powerful stuff, though, Danielle. And
it is very powerful. And when you step into it, you step into your power. And that's what I want for women. That is my heart for women, is to step into their power and to unabashedly, unapologetically live out of the power of their true selves.
I'm going to cry again. I've been like tearing up all the way through this. This is so powerful. I think too, it's not just what you're saying or how you're saying it, though you're saying both of them, you know, really eloquently. It's also the energy with which I'm sensing from you as you're saying it. There's a truth about it. I had a conversation with a friend today about some tough conversations, and I just said, no, if I'm asked, I'm going to tell the truth about this particular issue. Not that I would lie necessarily, but sometimes I think we withhold truth because we don't want to hurt the person that we're speaking with. And you know, I live from a space of integrity, which means I'm going to tell the truth, right? That's just for me. And I've found that in adopting even that, you know, all or nothing sort of attitude has really had an impact on my business, on my relationships, because I'm a recovering people pleaser, right? You're a recovering politician. I'm a recovering people pleaser, which means I was used to minimizing myself, right? I was used to making sure I didn't disrupt somebody else's process. I was used to doing all those things, which was not my truth. Right? There was no lie, but it wasn't also living in my truth. Yeah.
It's true, but you're also taking responsibility for other people's feelings. and taking ownership of other people's feelings. So taking their feelings as yours,
Mhm.
or acting like somehow you're so powerful that you somehow are now in charge of how they feel. And you know what? That is not trusting people. If I don't trust you
Mhm.
to just own your own feelings,
Mhm.
like, okay, if Candace and I have to have a hard conversation, I've got to be truthful. I've got to be kind. I've got to walk in
Mhm.
everything that I have to walk in.
Mhm.
Candace is going to be in charge of her feelings. And
Yep.
I trust Candace. I trust Candace to process through it and come to a good place. But whether she does or doesn't, I'm not in charge of that.
Yeah.
That's hers to do. That's her work to do.
Mhm.
And either she's going to do it or she's not going to do it, but
Mhm.
I'm not in charge of that. And as mothers and significant others and nurturing women, we often blur those lines of doing for, and
Mhm.
and that means taking responsibility for the feelings and emotions of others. And the message received is, okay, I don't have to do my own work because she's doing it for me. I don't ever have to be accountable because
Mhm.
she's going to make it okay.
Mhm.
um, and also, she kind of thinks that maybe I'm a little inept or daft or something, because clearly I don't have the right stuff to do this myself, so she's got
Yeah.
to do it for me. You know, it's disempowering to
Mhm.
others if we don't let them own their stuff.
Understood.
It's not a gift. It's not a gift to others for us to walk in that kind of enabling
Yep.
and hobbling, crippling way towards others.
Yeah.
And when we're making the story be about, yeah, but I'm not that kind of person, and I'm a caring, nurturing person, and I love helping others and whatnot. Um, you're making the story all about you,
Mhm.
and the story, like, where's the story for that person and what they get to be and what they get to own, you know? So it's tough stuff to walk through, there's no
Yeah.
question. Like, it all sounds lovely until you've got to actually do it.
Yep.
And it is tough. But any athlete will tell you that the game is 90% mental. It's not the strong back, the strong legs, the strong skill. Yeah, they got to have all that, but the game is 90% mental. And that's exactly how we got to get the job done as women.
Mhm. Yeah, and I
Mm-hmm.
think it's almost that uphill battle, because we do feel like we have to manage so many of those different
Right.
pieces, and well, we've been raised, right, to think that way too. So
Yeah.
we're coming up on culture too, and sometimes
Mm-hmm.
I've been having some epic conversations, right? COVID, one of the beautiful things about it is it's given me time. I always had time. I've been an entrepreneur forever. I could have created time
Yeah.
whenever. So I'm grateful for the awareness that I've always had the time, so I can take the time to connect with
Yeah.
people. And we've been talking about some of these big things, like why, and what are you taking with you, and what have you let go of, and what have you
Mm-hmm.
learned a new skill, right? I mean, there's been some great
Mm-hmm.
memes about that, but there were some skills I have picked up in COVID that I'm like, that was good, right? I probably wouldn't have done that, or I've now
Yeah.
I'm now doing this because, well, I'm not doing that anymore. And so I
Right.
think too, that with every challenge there is that opportunity. And what are we doing with
Absolutely.
opportunity?
Very true. And if you uh, have asked yourself what is possible, suddenly
Mm-hmm.
those opportunities show up,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe you didn't notice them
Yeah.
before because you were down in tactics. But when you
Yep.
raise yourself up to that strategic level of what is possible, you start to notice the opportunities that are in front of you. And then the only question is, not only can I, but should I?
And will I? Yeah.
And will I?
Will I?
Mm-hmm.
What an amazing thing. Well,
Mm-hmm.
Danielle, you and I could sit and chat for
We
forever,
could.
clearly.
Mm-hmm.
So as always, we'll have to schedule an encore performance. Um,
Love that.
yeah, I would as well. I know we've got some big things coming up, and so we're always going to have lots to
Mm-hmm.
talk about. But
Mm-hmm.
I just want to say a big, huge thank you for coming on and sharing from this place of vulnerability. and creating a safe space for someone who's listening to say, okay, that could be me. And for me, I say it like every time I do one of these. I'm like, I started these to do a platform so that people could share. And the one I think who's getting the most out of them, this girl. So I'm incredibly grateful that we could spend some time together in this way. And for any of our listeners, if you want to get in touch with Danielle, hint, hint, nudge, nudge, do it. All of her information is going to be down below. So just scroll on down, connect with her. If you want to be featured in the upcoming magazine, we've got some spots there too. I mean, we're doing some really exciting things with Sharp Women. When we're allowed to do events, those will be happening too.
Yes.
So yes, right. And if you're somebody who'd like to learn how to start dwelling in possibility, a great way to do that is get around those of us that already are, right? Because you are the sum of the people you spend time with. And if all you can do is just listen to us or get around our podcast or what we're doing, that will begin to have an impact on the way your life looks.
100%. Absolutely. Yeah. Good stuff.
Well, thank you, Danielle.
Candace.
Yeah, absolutely. This was fun. I was like, I just need a cup of coffee and I'm good to go. I got to say another thank you to our host platform that makes this possible. And there are lots of other great podcasters who are hosted there. So go take a listen, share, like, comment, subscribe. It does mean the world to us. And we appreciate it. Again, thank you, Danielle, for being my guest today. And to the rest of you, we will catch you on the flip side. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks for listening. This show was brought to you by Divas That Care. Connect with us on Facebook, on Instagram, and of course on divasthatcare.com, where you can subscribe to our newsletter so you don't miss a thing.